All right, it's 11:08 on the Talk of Chicago, 1690 WVON. We're going to keep it moving. Listen, I just want to remind you, join WVON's president, Melody Span Cooper, and business and wealth manager, Toy Salter, as they host a special book signing, reception, and one-on-one conversation with Louis Carr, the president of sales for BET. Black Entertainment Television. Come and get the blueprint on how to craft a successful work-life balance, and listen as the Chicago native shares how he helped build BET into the largest media powerhouse for African Americans. It is Thursday, June 16th at the DuSable Museum from 6 to 8. Admission is $24.99 and includes a signed copy of Carr's new book, Dirty Little Secrets. To RSVP, visit WVON.com and click on the Louis Carr Dirty Little Secrets banner. All right, then. Again, it is 11:09 on the Talk of Chicago, and I am so excited to bring our next guest to you. Her name is Jewel Pearson. She is a North Carolina project manager, and she couldn't wait to leave her apartment lifestyle behind and embark on her very own tiny house journey. Built for a queen, this modern 330-square-foot design might seem a bit extravagant to an outsider, but for Jewel, a 6 feet by 3 foot closet is a necessity. So are the screened-in porch and balcony. And Jewel, who's also known as Miss Gypsy Soul, plans to has blended all of her favorite household luxuries with the freedom of the open roll. Hi, Jewel Pearson. Welcome to the Midday Show. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
I want your life. I want your life, and I want your tiny home. What made
you? Guess what? I can get you on.
Listen, on the average, what does it cost for these tiny homes?
They vary. Mm-hmm. So, and it depends on how much of the work you're going to be able to do yourself, how much reclaimed and recycled materials you're going to use. Also, your time frame your build time frame is going to factor in that. So, a lot of times people will say they built their tiny house for $10,000 or $25,000. Mm-hmm. Most of those people have done most of the work themselves. It could potentially be a smaller house, and it may have taken them some years to construct. The higher end of that range, I've seen tiny houses in the $100,000 range. So it's just going to vary. Okay. Depending on your specifics.
All right. So listen, I am obsessed with Tiny Homes, Big Living, and the other tiny home shows on FYI. They are incredible. So what happened to you, Jewel? What was going on in your life when one day you said, I am getting out of this apartment and I want a tiny home?
So it wasn't something that just happened kind of overnight. It is something that I have been planning since my daughter was starting kindergarten. I was a single mom and knew that the hustle that I had to have to make sure she had and to raise her as I wanted her to be was going to take a lot of work. And once I had gotten through that, I knew I wanted to kind of coast and have the easier, lighter lifestyle and not have to work as hard and as much. Mm-hmm. And so when she started kindergarten, and my daughter is now almost 29, when she started kindergarten, my dream then was that I'd live in an RV. Wow. And that was kind of why?
No, I said wow.
Did you say why or wow?
Wow.
Oh, yeah. So, I want to, to me, it's an easier lifestyle. You can travel, see the country, and just, everything you have is with you. It's less responsibility. And that, to me, was just kind of what I wanted to be, a little bit irresponsible. But as I started doing my research, and over the years, I realized that the RVs that I was interested in were in the six-figure range, and that wasn't going to facilitate that easy lifestyle. So just a couple of years ago, one night I was Googling and came up on a tiny house and a woman who had built her own and her story. And her story resonated with me, and the fact that her house was mobile and she was done, it was built resonated with me, and I decided then that I was building a tiny house. So I started doing my research and just getting all the information, and here it is. Yesterday was actually my 1-year anniversary for living in my tiny house.
And so when you say a tiny home, what are the measurements of the home? And let me just say this. Your home is fabulous. You have an eye for design like I've never seen before. But we're seeing more of this.
Well, thank you.
It is beautiful. So what did your friend say when you said, I want a tiny home, I'm going to have a tiny home, and I'm living in my tiny home? What did your family and friends think about it?
Okay, so my house is probably, my friends refer to it as the medium tiny house because it is a little bit bigger than a lot of the tiny houses. It is built on a 28-foot trailer. Uh-huh. It is 8 foot 6 inches wide, and it's 13.6 high, and the interior square footage is 360 square feet, and that doesn't include my screened-in porch and balcony. When I said I was building a tiny house, I have some friends who, they kind of know me and know that whatever I'm going to do it well. And they were, supportive. They didn't understand tiny houses at the time, but they were supportive. And as it started coming to life, they were on board. And almost my sales team, they talked to everybody about my house. Mm-hmm. And then I had a couple of friends who just didn't understand it. I had, people say to me, are you experiencing hard times? Do you need a room? That kind of stuff.
Right.
So, it ranged. But my core team understood that, I was doing something, following a dream, and they were right there with me. And then, for the people who really couldn't visualize it, once it had been built and I have a few people that say, okay, I'm building a tiny house, or I understand it. I get it. It might not be for me, but I definitely get the reason why.
I love your loft. I think that's the coolest thing.
Thank you.
I love the loft inside of it. And so you're on this trailer. Now, you say you've been in the house for a year. Have you taken the house on the road yet? Because I would love to drive my tiny house across and park it in the parking lot and do my show from my tiny house. So how often I swear to God, we were talking about this earlier this week. So how many times have you yet to take it out on the road? And what would you have to put the trailer on? What kind of vehicle would you need to have to put the trailer on?
So I've moved it 3 times, but I've only moved it here locally in the city. Mm. To move it would require, like I said, it's a 28-footer, so it's kind of on the heavier side. And so to move it, you need something like a Ford F-350 or higher, a dually, something with some power that's going to move it. And when I move it, I actually hire a professional tow driver here. Mm-hmm. It is, because of its size, it's not something that I would move frequently. Mm-hmm. Initially, I intended to move it frequently, but now that it's built, I kind of baby it. I've got a whole bunch of windows, and I look at it, and, this is my baby, and so I kind of have changed on the thought that I would move it as frequently. Mm-hmm. If I were to move it, I'd probably move it now, maybe once in 6 months or a year, and stay wherever I'm going to put it for, a little bit of time before I would move it again. The smaller ones, yeah, you can kind of hitch them up with something like maybe a F-250 and be out. But this one is a little bit bigger, so I wouldn't move it as frequently. It would work fine to move it. I just don't necessarily, after having invested in it, I don't necessarily want that wear and tear.
All right, then. It is 11:17 on the Talk of Chicago, 773-591-1690. If you have any questions for Jewel, I have many. So we'll come back right after this, and you get to talk to Jewel Pearson. She's just a Renaissance woman. We'll be right back. All right, it's 11:20 on the Talk of Chicago, 1690 WVON. My name is Perry Small. This is the Midday Show, and we've been talking to Jewel Pearson, who has this beautiful tiny home. She was on HGTV's Tiny Home Big Living. I'm going to go to your phone calls. I have a bunch of questions, but I'm going to give this opportunity to the listeners. Let's go to Jean. Hi, Jean. Thanks for your call. Jean.
It's Jean. I think you're calling.
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to ask, I saw the tiny homes in Colorado at least 30 years ago. And I was with black friends out there visiting from Chicago, and I saw them building tiny homes. They took them up there, took them to the hills on flatbed trucks. Now, I want to know, what is the difference? They were the same thing. They were not as elaborate, though.
Well, that's the difference.
That's the difference.
That's the difference.
So they're not. It's not anything new. It's just something that people are doing now. Is that it?
I don't know, Julie. Go ahead, Jewel.
Mine is built on the trailer, so you don't have to put it on a trailer. I just have to have something to hitch up to it to pull the entire house. So those that you are talking about, they are probably small houses, but on a foundation.
Okay, that was their second home, and they built it in the. Well, anyway, I was just wondering. Okay, thank you.
All right, I thank you. Let's go to Al. Al, thanks for your call.
Hi.
Hi.
I was interested in your average cost per move. Like if you move to 500 miles or so, what would the average cost be? And I assume you take it to trailer park. Are there many trailer parks out there that are African American friendly? I don't necessarily want to be around a whole bunch of Trump supporters all day.
Well, that's a good question, and I wanted to ask you that too. Where do you move? I mean, what kind of parcels can you move your trailer to, Jewel?
So it depends. Initially, when I moved the house, I was in an RV park, and I knew I didn't want to be there long term just because of the number of people that were out there. I was looking for something with a little bit more privacy. So now I am in a private lot in someone's backyard.
Oh, wow.
It varies from city to city. Some cities are actually developing tiny house communities, and depending on the location is, I guess, going to depend on the reception in that RV park, if that's where you are. I mean, it's the RV parks are the RV parks across America, and the climate of America is the climate of America, so it's just going to, depend on what you come up with.
So pretty much you just can't see a plot of land in the city, like a vacant lot, and then just put your home there. You have to go where they are tiny home friendly, right?
Well, most of the cities have issues with tiny homes because they don't meet what most cities deem as the minimum square footage requirements for a house. Mm-hmm. So a house on a foundation in most cities, it's required to have 500 square feet, and so that kind of defeats the purpose of what we're doing with tiny houses. And that's one of the reasons that you build it on a trailer, so you can kind of get around that requirement.
I love that.
And so since it doesn't meet the requirement, most of the cities aren't allowing tiny homes on private property. I actually tried to do that here, and the city here told me no.
What city
is
that?
So it just depends.
What city?
I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay,
they
Charlotte.
wouldn't allow me to have it on a private lot by itself.
Okay.
So it just depends on some of the more rural areas don't have problems with it. Sometimes that's not necessarily the best place for us as African Americans, and I get that. It is something to find a location to place it. I say it's not impossible. It will take some effort and some work and some patience, but it's absolutely doable.
All right, let's go to Mitchell. Mitchell, thank you so much for your call. Go right ahead. Mitchell. What are you all doing today? 773-591-1690. Let's hurry up and get these guests, these callers up on the line. So, Jewel, what would you say your experience has been with this tiny home?
I love my house, but I did put a lot of effort into it up front in understanding how I used my space and what I needed and had to have in my home. I see a lot of people who are joining the movement just because they think a house is cute mm-hmm. and may not end up living in it long term. I say do the work up front just to make sure it's something that you can deal with, as well as making sure you understand, what your personal requirements are. Like I said, I hit a year yesterday in my tiny house, and I absolutely love my house. No nothing that I would change, nothing about the experience that of living in my tiny home that I have any regrets about. So it's been a good thing.
I thank you so much for that. Let's go to Desiree or Mitchell. Let me try Mitchell again. Mitchell, are you there now?
Is Michelle?
Michelle. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, okay, Perry.
Hi.
Hi, Joel. I have a question.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi. First off, my husband and I are looking to relocate from Chicago, and I just love the idea of the tiny homes. And I was wondering, what are the things I should consider? Like, you've answered like some of my questions already, but like financially, what should I be considering? And we want to kind of go to a smaller town, and rural is fine for us. I just want to be able to have my dog back, a dog back. So basically, I guess I'm just trying to find out what are the things that we should really be considering in terms of financial wise and in town.
I'm not 100% how to answer that financially. Like I mentioned earlier, the price of a tiny house is going to range based on how much of the work effort you can do versus how much of it you're going to have to hire out. So depending on what you understand your needs to be and the size tiny house you're going to want to live in, I would say, shop it around to see what you see out there as far as the tiny house builders. I actually offer my plans as well as bills for my tiny house. So if you're interested in that, and this might be a shameless plug, but I can certainly help you in that area. But financially, you're just going to have to understand what your budget is and what you'll need to stick with, and based on that budget, understanding your must-haves and being able to ensure that you include or are able to include your must-haves within the budget that you have allocated to yourself.
What's your monthly budget? I mean, your expenses. What would you say your monthly expenses are for a tiny home, for your tiny home?
For mine, my monthly expenses are around about $450, and that's my lot rent as well as my utilities.
Wow.
So a big difference. I'm used to living in mid-rises in the city, so it's definitely a fraction of what I was paying to live in those,
right,
in apartments in the city for sure.
Let's go to Sheila.
And
Sheila, go ahead.
Hello?
Sheila, go right ahead.
Yes, quickly. I see these shows on television, and I'm always concerned about what do you do in the case of a tornado?
Okay, that's a good question. The inclement weather. I mean, where
would you go?
So I'm on a piece of private property, and there's another house here, so I would certainly go to that house. But in a tornado, even a house on a foundation isn't safe. So,
right.
It's kind of the same. It's kind of the same deal. You're going to have to seek shelter, and that's I wouldn't stay here in the house in a tornado. But I've had severe thunderstorms and not been affected at all.
Let's go to Barbara. Barbara, real quick.
Yes. Do they give you a mortgage on the tiny house?
Do you have a mortgage, or do you just pay for it outright?
I pay for my house, so I don't have a mortgage on my house. Some of the tiny home companies do offer financing, so you could, in essence, have a mortgage on it. A lot of people try to not have a mortgage on it so that, it kind of helps with the simplification and you're not
pays for
tied
itself.
down to
and pays for itself. Tracy, go right ahead.
Right.
Yeah, how you doing, Perry? To your guest, real quick, two questions. One, what can I find information on the tiny house? Is the website? And the second one, how can I get in contact with your guest?
All right, then we'll give that information at the end of the show. The segment. I'm trying to get as many calls as possible. Desiree, go right ahead.
Hi, I wanted to ask, how do you compensate for water usage and your plumbing? Thank you so much.
All right, good question.
So my tiny house is plumbed just like a regular house on the property, and so your connections are very similar to an RV. So I have connections on the side of the house and a 50 amp plug and a connection for a water hose, and you just plug up to your source. So here on the property, I'm connected to to the gentleman's utilities, but in an RV park, you would just connect to those utilities there.
Let's go to Phyllis. Phyllis, thanks for your call. You're going to be my last call with Jewel Pearson.
Hi, hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah.
My question is, have you ever seen any tiny houses with a basement? I'm looking for something stationary. I do have property that I'd like to build several on and just offer it to single women or women with children.
Oh, that's wonderful, Phyllis. Thank you so much. Can you get a tiny house with a foundation, with a basement?
If you're building on a foundation, absolutely. It would just be a matter of building it, up over a basement. But on a foundation, you could certainly accomplish that.
Jewel, I cannot thank you enough for joining us today. It has been such a pleasure to talk to you. Tell our listeners where they can get more information about tiny houses and if you have a contact where people can reach you.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. You could just really search on tiny houses and a plethora of information will come up. My website is MissGypsySoul.com, and that's MSGypsySoul.com. I'm also on Facebook as Miss Gypsy Soul and Instagram and Twitter as Miss Gypsy Soul. So I welcome anyone that would like to get some more information from me.
Listen, it's been a pleasure, Jewel. Congratulations, a year in the tiny house.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for sharing. I think a lot of people, and I said this at the beginning, a lot of you are going to consider a tiny house.